just real quick on who Indiana Fiber Network is for those that may not know us. We host the largest privately held statewide fiber optic network, and we work with probably 40 plus healthcare networks with a lot of the county hospitals and larger hospital networks. We also host the shared platform for the Indiana Telehealth Network, which provides healthcare providers the opportunity to securely exchange information across the private networks that are provided. And IFN's objective with rural healthcare is to provide the necessary bandwidth with the dependability and speeds required to deliver all the applications and transmit the information that healthcare demands. And so, in partnership with IRHA, IFN's hosts information technology-based webinars every other month, where we try to highlight organizations and partners that provide Indiana healthcare with outstanding technology solutions. And today we have a very special guest we're really excited to have, and that organization is Apparatus, and we have a few individuals that we're presenting to you today. What I'm going to do is I'll turn it over to my friend Eric with Apparatus that will introduce his company and let you know what you're in for today.
Great, thank you, Corey, and it's great to be partnering with the Indiana Fiber Network. Good morning, everyone. As Corey mentioned, my name is Eric Averett, and I'm a member of the business development team here at Apparatus, and I'll be the host for today's call. This webinar, by the way, is exclusive to the members of the Indiana Rural Health Association, and we're certainly excited to be a part of it. And our goal for today is really to make this as engaging and interactive a session as possible. So with that in mind, I did want to point out one of the features for interaction on today's call, which is the chat or messaging feature, which you should see in your window there. I posted a question to the group, which is simply, what city are you joining us from today? So if you could take a look for that chat messaging feature. I know we've got Dana calling in from Scottsburg this morning, and we've got Kathy calling in from Plainfield, so welcome to both of you. So as I go through some introductions here, if you could look for that messaging window and let us know where you're calling in from. That's important because we'll also be using that same feature to gather your questions throughout the call. So in terms of Q&A, we'll respond to questions submitted via chat throughout the webinar, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll open the lines up for additional questions and discussion. And then I'll also be sending a recording of this call out to each of you as a follow-up message. All right, so we've got a few more chiming in. So welcome to Annette, who is here in Indianapolis as well, and Dave from Cincinnati. So welcome to both of you. Apparatus is located near downtown Indianapolis at 14th and Meridian. We were founded back in 1999. We have over 200 employees and clients that range from startups to Fortune 500 companies. Essentially, the mission of our company is to simplify technology for those clients, and we do that through an IT platform that we created, which is called Core. Now, Core Intelligence or Business Intelligence Dashboards is a critical element of that platform and really the focus of our call today. And what our experience and those 200 employees, our expertise and experience allow us to do for our clients is really design, implement, and manage the solutions that we will be talking about today. Which leads me to the introduction of today's speakers. I'll start with Jordan Udy, and Jordan is a service delivery manager and business intelligence solutions architect here at Apparatus. He's really grown our business intelligence or BI team, and he's done that on the foundation of being a Microsoft certified professional in BI, as well as a certified project management professional. So Jordan, thank you for joining us. And our other presenter today is Katie Jenkins. And Katie is a senior technology analyst, a graduate of the Orr Fellowship. Katie's a Microsoft certified professional in business intelligence and also a Microsoft certified technology specialist for SQL Server implementation and management. So I'm excited to hear from both of them. I learned something new from each of them every time I hear them present, and I know from my experience that they're skilled at answering, really a wide range of questions that you may have, from a dashboard basics line of questions to, more advanced questions that you may have about this technology. So before we transition to Katie, I did want to kind of do a virtual show of hands here to get things started. So I'm going to open a poll question, and you can just select one of these options. Let me open the poll. So just to kind of get a virtual show of hands of our audience here today, what is your experience with dashboards? Are you looking to start using dashboards, currently developing dashboards, already using dashboards today, or none of the above? So take 10 or 15 seconds here and let us know where you stand today. Okay, we'll do 5 more seconds and then I'll close the poll. Okay. Thank you all for participating in the poll. And so as you can see, we've got about a third of the group looking to start using dashboards, another third currently using dashboards, and then 15% falling into the category of developing dashboards today, with the remainder in the none of the above category. So again, that's helpful information as a background. So thank you for your responses. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Katie and Jordan.
I'm just trying to get enough information to.
And before I do that, if everyone could mute your individual phones or computers, that would be helpful. So we'll keep an eye on the chat window. Please use that feature to submit questions throughout. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Katie to begin presenting. Katie, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for all the introduction. We appreciate that. So just real quickly, kind of get back to where we were here. So today the things that we're going to go over are here on the agenda. So we're going to go over some dashboard basics, just some do's and don'ts, and what are dashboards and how do you create one effectively. And then after that, we're going to go over dashboard metrics that we would typically display to different healthcare audiences within your network or within your hospital practice, wherever you guys are kind of on that spectrum. So we'll go through those in detail. So first, for the dashboard basics here, keep in mind that a dashboard is never going to equal the same thing as an emailed report. I mean, we do a lot of push subscriptions here at Apparatus, but we're really trying to help people in our organization and also outside of our organization move towards a portal-based dashboard that always has a live connection. So you're never looking at static data. We like to push people towards more of a pull method for dashboards, and that live connection is typically pretty important.
Can you expand on that a little bit? A lot of folks use a data warehouse solution that is at least a day behind as far as the data that's available. What are the implications of using not live data?
Even when you're using some data with latency, it's always best to still keep that in a live connection, so that even at midnight when your data warehouse updates, that's still going to create a fresh copy of that report for the next day. I think it just really helps. It's a lot easier maintenance-wise to continue to keep that data connection open live. But it's also very important to the user to make sure that the user knows and understands that they're always getting whatever the freshest data is, even if that data is going to be 24, 12, whatever hours behind. The next point here is not to make a heavy dashboard. So studies kind of show that any dashboard with more than 7 panels can't really be truly consumed in the amount of time we want people to consume a dashboard, right? We hope that you're going to open up a dashboard in the morning and it's going to be kind of a 5-minute or less check on what you have to do for the day and what your business looks like, and when you start in the morning. So any more than 7 panels is just really too much to consume in that period of time that we're hoping people are spending on this. The next point is garbage in, garbage out. This applies to every industry, every role basically even. So make sure that, inside your hospital, that your hospitalists and your nurses and your business staff, make sure that everyone is doing everything they can do to capture good data throughout the day. This is especially hard for nurses a lot of times because nurses still live kind of in two worlds. They still live in a paper world and an electronic world, but making sure that even when we have to bridge that gap, that the data we have gets put in accurately and everyone is collecting data consistently across the organization. And finally, use familiar chart formats. I have this particular hatred that I always talk about with stacked bars, right? If you have more than 3 or 4 options on a stacked bar, I think it becomes really hard to look at and hard to deal with. But stick with bar charts and pie charts, and I think the familiar chart formats are really good, especially for nurses and business users that are at lower levels in your company that need to look at things quickly and need to have a very quick, brief understanding of what needs to be done for the day. We don't want to have those people sitting in front of a chart for 20 minutes trying to figure out what it says. So we would make the suggestion that you stick to things that are familiar. Next, so key performance indicators are a huge part of having dashboards. So it's great to surface information, especially in a visual manner, for people, and even just surfacing that data does lead to change, but how you truly create change in an organization is by displaying that data with a KPI or a goal. That makes it both actionable and insightful. So you can see we have this chart here on the right side of the slide that looks at how actionable and how insightful metrics are. So you want to stick to things in dashboards that are more of a short-term metric, something that I can get done today to make this organization better. Long-term things are great, and sometimes you do need to surface that data, but we wouldn't necessarily suggest that that is the best data for a dashboard. Again, we look at quick, what am I going to do today? How can I make things better today? And KPIs are great for that. Again, I kind of touched on this, but make sure that they're understandable at a glance. We don't want someone to spend a lot of time just trying to understand a chart or just trying to understand what the ask is of them for the day. Make sure that things are understandable and clear. And then I always say this because I think it's easily overlooked, but use a combination of color and shape to express your KPI meanings. More than 10% of males are colorblind, and I have more than once put an indicator on a dashboard and then have someone come to me and be like, I don't know what this says. So I would definitely make the recommendation that you always use a combination of both color and shape. Just to make that a little more clear and to take care of that situation before it happens. So now we're going to go through, after we've done our dashboard basics, and kind of look at healthcare roles and how we would display data and what data we would display to them. So these are the groups here that we're going to go through. So we're going to talk about environmental services, so your bed management staff, the staff that are actually going in and turning over rooms, nurse managers, private practice physicians. For any of you that have a lot of private practice physicians kind of in and out of your hospital or admitting to your hospital, it's super important that you keep a line of communication open with them. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then the ED director, surgery director, and then what you would typically want to show to a hospital or network president. So we're gonna drop in another poll here real fast to just see what of those different types of roles you guys are most looking to understand, or which ones are most relevant to your organization. Also, I would think of this too as what groups in your organization need more efficiency the most. And we'll leave this open for 10 seconds. And then we'll close it and move on. Eric, do you want to add something?
Thank you, Katie. So yes, as Katie mentioned, we'll leave this open for 10 seconds or so. So just to get a kind of another virtual show of hands here, as you think about potential value in your organizations, which role or webinar topic here is most relevant to you? Keep things open for another 5 or 10 seconds. And closing the poll now. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating.
So it looks like from this, it looks like kind of the things that we're most interested in talking about are what we need to show to nurse managers and how they manage their staff. And then it looks too like a lot of you maybe interact with private practice physicians. We definitely are going to touch on the other three there, but we'll make sure we talk a little bit in detail about nurse managers and private practices. So the first one we're going to go over is the environmental services dashboard. So here we want to make sure, again, we show things that are actionable, but also one of the things that we want to talk about here is predictive analytics. Just a slight technical difficulty, but we will resume. All right. So when we talk about predictive analytics, we are thinking about how we use historical patient data to predict when we're going to need to turn over rooms and beds. And so a lot of the things that we would do there is we would build a model that has more detail about so what unit the patient was in, what procedures were performed, and their age and some other items. And that'll, based on that, we can predict the amount of time we think that an individual will stay in a hospital or in that unit specifically. And we can try to make sure that you have your environmental services staff right where they need to be when you're going to turn over different beds. And then, again, this is all about optimizing turnover for that set of staff. Make sure you have your team in the right, most efficient place, and make sure that you do some other sort of efficiency things there in terms of having. So again, we're going to optimize turnover. So you want to make sure that, you have a set of staff and all they do is turnover in, a surgery unit or turnover in an endoscopy surgery space, turnover in cardio. If you can have those procedures that they're going to go through, if you can have staff that knows those, backwards and forwards, that'll make sure that you're turning over rooms quickly. And then also we're going to make sure that we have people in the right space, in the right places at the right times. So here we have a graphic of something that we've done before. So if you can arrange these things on a map, that's actually going to be one of the most effective things that you can do for your environmental services and also for your nurses. Not all modern EMRs come with this kind of map-based capability, but we think this is really important, and this is kind of something custom that we have built and can build into an EMR. So you can see here, we just have a capacity measure on the left side, and then where the needs are over here on the right side of that graphic. And so this, again, making sure we're in the right place at the right time, making sure that expectations are clear, that'll really help when you're trying to turn over rooms. So next we're going to talk about the nursing manager dashboard. So the key thing here is exception reporting, and we find this in a lot of different industries, including what we do. We need to always make sure what is the greatest need, what is the most urgent need. So we're going to suggest this for your nursing staff too. So what patients are in most need, and how can we boil down what those needs are into a task list for your different nursing staff. So where do we need the most staff, or what rooms have the most urgent needs, and arrange those tasks by importance and create a simple, small list instead of a nurse being overwhelmed by the amount of rooms she has and trying to figure out what's going on in each. If you can boil that down into a task list for your nurses, that will really help them be more effective. And again, we're going to arrange this on a map if possible. So we have a similar map here. So on the left-hand side, you can see different tasks that need to be completed by room and what the level of completeness is in terms of checking them in and making sure that we know everything about the patient. And then here on the right side, you can see these needs kind of arranged by, they're arranged in order, but the colors are going to show you what needs the most care, and the graph there will put those rooms together for you. Do we have any questions over the nursing manager dashboard? I know that there were a couple people that had said that they were interested in that.
Katie, I'll add one.
Oh, great, yes.
I don't want to get too in-depth here technically, but how are we using historical information that's available to us to identify when a patient may leave a room?
Oh, okay, so a little bit further back there, if we're talking about patient turnover and where we need to be when. So that's kind of a model-based thing. So we'll go in and we'll take, your last 5 years of data, and we'll determine based on different characteristics like age and procedure and all that kind of stuff, which patients are going to stay the longest. So we know we can create a model that goes through and says if this person is 56 and they had a lung collapse and that's why that was their reason for being admitted, and we did these 3 procedures, we can determine how that person, how long that person's going to stay and what those person's kind of future needs are going to be. And we can even go as far there with predictive analytics as looking at that person's risk at being readmitted. We can really do a lot there with even just 5 years of historical data. We can do a lot to determine those kinds of things.
We had a question submitted, which is the information pouring into this dashboard coming from the EMR?
Yes, it is. And this dashboard situation is the one where it's very important to have a live connection. I know some of the EMRs, particularly Epic. Epic is going to sometimes have a more of a data warehouse model for your reporting staff that will typically be maybe a day behind, but we would suggest that if possible you use that live connection so that as a nurse checks off a task, that task will be removed from the dashboard. She can move on to what the next thing is that they need to do. All right, so now if we're talking about private practice dashboards, the most important thing here, and it's not going to be a flashy dashboard, it's not going to be something that looks super exciting, but the most important thing here is a listing of patients that have been admitted, where they are, what their diagnosis is, what we estimate their time in the hospital to be based on all of those predictive analytics that we had just talked about. So what their estimated discharge date is, and then any action items that are needed by the particular physician that would have admitted them, and or also just kind of a primary care physician. This would also be very helpful for. So you can see here, this is pretty simple, like I said, not very flashy, but if today is October 2014, I have these 3 patients that have been admitted. Here are the units that they're in. Here is the reason for diagnosis, and then their estimated discharge date. Again, this would be a calculation based on predictive analytics like we talked about before. And then here you can see just kind of an indicator there of whether or not they need to take any action. So you can see with the second patient there, Jane Smith, they need to verify the patient medication list. And you'll notice, like we talked about before, combination of color and of shape on that indicator. So now if we move on to an ED director, this is always a little bit of a different animal because in the ED you have to move super fast. So the important things here is the status of every room and all the patients that are in triage or in the waiting room. We want to see the severity by room, and then also we're going to do that same time in hospital plus estimated discharge. This has to be, in this case, this has to be a much, much more precise model because we aren't talking about hours or days, we're talking about minutes when the ER. So that's a model that has to really have a lot of highly specific inputs to it about what they are being seen for in the ED. And so that estimated discharge is not only going to estimate the time that they would go home, but also the time that they would be admitted to a different unit if we were going to admit a patient versus send them home. And again, so I kind of mentioned this already, but the predictive analytics, we're going to look at the time remaining based on severity, diagnosis, and also demographics, typically age. And then we will also kind of show what the current trends are with ED patients by hour, by day of week. We've got an example here for that. So you can see this just kind of a quick dashboard, 4 panels, easy to look at. So then the first left-hand corner, we have the ED visits by severity. So whether or not it is urgent, immediate, or less of a priority, and you can see of the patients you have in right now, what does that breakdown look like? Here on the right side, it shows the predicted patient minutes remaining based on the patient diagnosis. You can see that's the room number there on the left, and then the ICD-9 codes for that if you would need the codes, and then what we project to be the outcome of that. So you can see here some of those are discharged, but some of them are also admit, and we're gonna do our best to predict when we would be able to get them out of the ER, even if we're admitting them instead of sending them home.
Katie, going back to one of your earlier points, the bottom left chart there is a chart that I'm not too familiar with. So can you explain kind of why we decided to use that visualization and what it tells us?
Yeah, so this chart down here in the corner, left-hand bottom corner, it's a box and whisker chart, and it shows ED volume. So what this does here is in the middle there is a dotted line and there's a straight line. So the straight line is going to be your average. So for a Sunday, our average patient volume is going to be kind of in this middle range here. So for that day, the median, the average actually pretty well overlap. And then what we're gonna have here, this outer side of the box, on the bottom, that's the 25th percentile. The top line on that box there, of the actual box, the top of the box is going to be the 75th percentile. And then the whiskers out here, the bottom and the top, represent the minimum and the maximum of the last year. So just by looking at this, you can see that orange line is today. This is how many patients we've admitted today or are projected to admit today if it's still a partial day. And then you can see how that looks with every Sunday for the last 12 months. Is today going to be better? Is today going to be worse? Do I need to adjust my staff? So just that is helps there to make sure that you guys can know, are you doing things effectively, that kind of thing. And then the chart here on the bottom right is just for all of the ED patients that were transferred from the ED, where have we sent them, and knowing and understanding this as a trend and knowing, what to kind of expect in the future based on that. So next up, we've got the surgery director dashboard. So here we're going to do all facility-based metrics in the kind of one half of the dashboard. So, we all know surgery directors live and die by room utilization. So what did we do yesterday? What are we on track for today? If we have low utilization, how did that happen? So we'll look at that. We'll look at utilization by specialty, and then we'll also look at the post-anesthesia care unit times by specialty. That's PACU right there, is post-anesthesia care unit. And then we're also going to look at production metrics. So we're going to look at the top surgeons by case volume and the top surgeons by dollars, and then also the top performing rooms by case volume and top performing rooms by dollars as well. All right, so here, the top left chart, this shows, so a single line shows the total patient time spent in all of these areas combined, but then you can see how that time that they've spent breaks out into the various elements of kind of those patient wait times through a surgery process. The bottom left chart there is just a quick count of how many patients we've seen, how many patients were admitted in some cases if that's appropriate, outpatient and inpatient counts here. In the top right corner, that's where we actually show those production metrics. So you can see the doctor, their specialty, and then with their case volume or their dollars, and we arrange that a couple of different ways.
Katie, real quick on the top right chart there. In your experience, have you seen any pushback or had a lot of questions around surgeons seeing other surgeons' metrics?
I think that this is always a concern, right? You never want to necessarily share too much information, but one thing that a lot of studies have proven to be true, particularly with doctors and most specifically surgeons, is that they will typically perform better if shown their competition, right? So by nature, the way you get to be a surgeon, the way you make it through, residency and everything as a doctor, typically that leads to having very, very competitive surgeons and doctors. So we want to do our best to help them perform better. It's not pretty, it's not necessarily like something that you're proud of, but that it is one way to definitely help with competition and help drive progress with those physicians. And one quick note, we don't necessarily show this here, but just some issues that we've had with room utilization in the past and some things that we've uncovered just as, I guess, helpful hints for you guys as you move forward with dashboarding. A lot of times when there is low utilization, it could be that you place surgeon blocks out in future dates for surgeons to schedule their surgeries in that certain block. And we've had a lot of situations where those blocks were never let go. So you have very low utilization, and it's because there wasn't room to schedule other surgeries in there because we failed to let those blocks go. So just as a note for you is if you move forward, creating some dashboards for surgeries, especially utilization, that's one of the issues that we've found. So next up is the hospital president dashboard. So this is going to be typically a very high level. A lot of times we want to look at what happened yesterday and how does that compare to the last month or how does that compare to the last year. So we're going to combine a lot of these things that we've already talked about. So with surgery metrics, what hospitals in the network are performing the best, what rooms are performing the best, and then also what doctors are performing the best. In census is just always something that is super important in a hospital. So making sure that you show what the census was at midnight and how that compares to the census numbers taken in previous months and years. Then the ER metrics like we talked about before, and then some financial metrics. So there you're going to want to talk about gross revenue, and then also what is the outpatient factor, right? What percentage of our income is coming from outpatient as opposed to inpatient. And so just want to see what kind of the money makers are there and how that breaks down. So here we have a 6-panel dashboard. So up in the top left here, we're going to show the payer mix. Again, very important, especially demographically, as you look at the differences between a hospital that's maybe downtown Indianapolis versus a hospital that's out in the country or out on the north side. That payer mix is going to be typically pretty telling of the people that you've serviced. Here we have that patient chart that we'd seen before, so it looks at the total amount of patients and then also shows here lower the number of admits for inpatient and then admits for observation. Over here on the top right, we have just a quick look at for each emergency room, what is the total length of time between patient arrival and check-in and patient departure. Sometimes those are longer depending on what time of the year it is and therefore what type of injuries you're seeing. But you also want to check those between your different hospitals and your different emergency rooms, right? You can definitely see what is emergency room 2 doing better, faster, stronger than your other EDs. So this is just typically helpful just from a gut check of how are all my hospitals performing and are some of them outperforming, and how can we take those habits and policies and procedures and make sure that they are kind of even across all different EDs. In the bottom left, we have the top 10 diagnosis groups. Again, typically just very telling depending on the time of year. These might change, but you can have a quick look at this, and this is also pretty telling of how many admits you're going to have and explaining that number of admits and discharges and that kind of thing. And then down here, we talked about revenue for the last 12 months, and then another one on the bottom is the outpatient factor, which we also talked about a little bit on the last slide, but just showing that percentage of income based on the different business areas of your hospital. So that is everything that we kind of had prepared to talk about, but I mean, we can definitely take any questions that you guys had. We can go back to any slides that you were hoping to learn more about. I'm going to turn it over to Eric, I think.
You need to unmute all in that computer.
Okay, so we're gonna. Thank you, Katie and Jordan. And so before I provide my wrap-up comments. Let me open things up here. Any questions for Katie and Jordan? And if you would prefer, as we're opening up the individual lines here, if you would prefer to submit those via the chat window, we're also keeping an eye on that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start to wrap up. Mary Beth is opening up the line, so feel free to jump in if you have a question. Otherwise, again, I'll wrap things up by providing a reminder, first of all, that we will be following up with an email, which will include a link to the recording of this call. Also, we'll include the guide, 5 Ways Dashboards Can Change Your Day, in that message. And you can feel free to contact me directly. I'm going to pull up my contact information slide here. So please feel free to contact me directly if you'd like to have a follow-up discussion with our team here at Apparatus with regard to dashboard. So lastly, we want to thank the Indiana Rural Health Association and the Indiana Fiber Network for the opportunity to participate in your webinar series. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Corey for closing comments.
Thank you, Eric. Fantastic presentation to you and the team. That was very informative, great slide deck, and we're very happy to have you join the webinar. So I'd encourage all that attended to reach out to Eric and team if you have any other questions that come up, or just any further consult you might need from them. And again, thank you so much for joining this webinar. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.